Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Boxscore Geeks Show. This is my first time back in 2017. I think Dre and Brian were here with you last week. We're going to talk a little bit about everything up and coming in the NBA, a little bit of MVP talk, a little bit of the news, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. My name is Patrick Minton, and you can find me at boxscoregeeks.com. And the voice of God, are you on camera? I can't see you. Are you on camera?
I am, yeah.
The voice of God to my
Your left-hand side,
left,
I'm right there.
to my left is Brian Foster. Say hello to everybody.
What's up? Good evening, Dre. And welcome back in 2017. There's been a lot going on in the NBA last few weeks. We'll try to get through it all. There's even been a trade today, since the last show. So yeah, we'll talk about all this. Some articles by Dre that he's not here to talk about, but we'll summarize. Yeah. And there's a lot to go through tonight, Patrick.
Dre's been taking advantage of those early mornings or late nights, as the case may be, with his brand spanking new son to write some articles, which is, I have no idea how he finds the time, but I'm glad to see the content. So recently he talked about, Giannis. I gotta admit, I don't watch a lot of Bucks games. I still can't pronounce the guy's name. I just say the Greek Freak.
Yeah.
But damn, he looks pretty damn good this year, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's great. So we'll get into the MVP race a little bit after this, but we've been talking about how he's, been a front runner pretty much this whole time, and with Chris Paul's injury, he might be the front runner. And yeah. Dre just wrote an article looking at his season, and he talked about it in a few different ways. So, points over par. That's a great metric per minute. And then he's also, let's see, did he look at game changers as well? I'm not sure if he did, but he might have.
Yeah. He's the kind of player, it's really hard to find a single aspect of the game that he's not like having an effect on, right? He rebounds the ball, he blocks shot, he gets steals, he scores super efficiently. He's just an all-around what's the word we use for it? 5-tool player or whatever.
Stat sheet stuffer.
He's a triple threat. Let's drag out some more cliches. He finds a way to win. He's just an all-around. He's just stuffing the stat sheet, as you say. He's really putting up big numbers. It's kind of a leap that we weren't expecting. I mean, I think people already thought it was good last year. So for him to make a big leap like this has been pretty cool. And he's only like 22 or something, right?
He's pretty young. I mean, I even gave a devil's advocate argument to some extent about his contract that, maybe he hasn't produced enough to get this big of a deal. And, you guys were...
Yeah, now he's like, fuck you, Brian Foster.
Yeah, now he's like, yep, you were not even a shred of truth to that argument. He is definitely living up to his contract. And I think kind of the most interesting piece of data that Dre put into this article is that he was looking at players with 6 points over par games, and he picked that amount because he says that you need to have a 6-point victory margin to make you be a contending team, right? A team that could
if you kind of look back at like the best teams in the NBA year over year, 6 seems to be about the magic number where you are a contender, like not just a playoff team, but a contender.
And what Dre found is that Giannis has more 6 points over par games than anyone else in the NBA this year. He has 22 of them, more than Rudy Gobert's 18, Chris Paul's 17, Jimmy Butler's 16, and so forth. However, his team's win-loss record in those games is only 14-8 compared to all those other teams.
Really weird, isn't it?
Where they have a huge margin of victory. So yeah, it's his team just is not that good compared to these other players.
I mean, his team's all right, but I mean, obviously the vast majority of that is due to Giannis, right? I mean, they get some good producers in Greg Monroe and stuff, but a lot of the like big minute players like Dellavedova and etc. just aren't. I mean, they're bit pieces, right? They're not really moving the needle. So I think the team is one good star away from not even great necessarily, but good. I think one good star would definitely make them a contender, I
Yeah,
think.
they've got some decent role players like Chris Middleton and some other guys. So yeah, they could be okay. But
Well,
yeah,
isn't Middleton like injured for the year?
he
Like
is. Yeah,
that's I mean that's probably
I'm already talking
it,
future for them.
right. But I mean, if you look at it, if they had Middleton this year, that would probably be an extra like 2 to 3 wins over their current record,
Yeah, it would
right?
help.
Oh.
But yeah, that's all I got on Giannis. He's pretty damn good.
So next up, we were going to talk a little bit about we. So we should mention Dre had his favorite article. He loves to write this. The top 10 box scores of the week came out not yesterday, the day before on Monday. A lot of interesting things in there. It's a great article for you guys to follow if you're just into looking at what happened last week that I missed maybe, right? A lot of stuff in there. Dre has a fascination. If you follow this stuff, he has a fascination with triple doubles, and I think
Yep.
he has an especially fascination with double doubles, like even when they're bad. Or no, what's the 20 rebound games is his thing. If somebody gets a 20 rebound game, you could have 10 turnovers to go with it. You're probably going to make the top box scores of the week anyway. um, so, I mean, that's always an interesting read. I like it because we also highlight bad scores, not just good ones. There's always one or two in there that are just freakishly bad or unusual.
He just
Um,
keeps burying Moutier, and I mean,
yeah.
the Nuggets are just running him out there. So what are you gonna do? Like,
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, at some point we could talk about Malone too, but I mean, um, at some point, maybe you're losing a lot because you're trotting out a really really bad point guard, and not because your team isn't trying or all these other reasons that you drag them through the mud in the press for. Doesn't seem very productive to me to trot out a really terrible point guard and then complain to the press about how the effort your team is giving.
so Patrick, I'm glad you touched on that because we talked about last week when you weren't here, and that's a kind of a coaching thing that I wanted to ask you about because for those that are new to the show, Patrick has a lot of coaching experience, right, over in Germany and
I wouldn't
other
say all
places.
that. I mean,
But
like,
some.
I
So
mean, and again, nothing at even what we would call the semi-professional level, but I coached adults. Let's
there
put
we
it
go.
that
You coached
way.
adults. So
They were actual adults in an actual organized league system. That's as far as I'm going to take this. If you ever go to Germany and want to email me about what level I coached, I'll be happy to inform you. But
so my comment about this, which I feel like you were kind of in the ballpark of just before this, just now, is that Malone complaining about their effort level and their defense is kind of ridiculous considering the Nuggets are just bereft of talent. Like they're playing up to their talent, if not better, almost it seems like, which is a credit to Malone and the players. But is he
yeah,
right to be mad at them? Like they've got Farid, who they're not playing a lot of minutes for some reason. They've got Jokic, who's ridiculously good, but they
it
don't have a
was
lot
yeah.
otherwise.
Um, yeah, I mean, if you look at their roster, there just aren't a lot of star level players there, right? I mean, and a lot of like they have some like very mediocre players that are getting a ton of minutes, like Gallinari. Sure, he shows flashes of brilliance now and then, but he's just not a good player. I mean,
He's in his 30s now
arguably he
too,
never
right?
yeah, he's arguably never been a good player, even though when he was very young he showed the flashes and looked like he was going to be really productive, but then he had one really bad injury after another. And so he's really never been a productive player over a long time. They play Wilson Chandler a ton of minutes, and Wilson Chandler has like a 10-year history in the league of being decidedly average. Like he's just nailing that average mark really hard. And yet they've always paid and played him as if he was a star. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And then of course, I mean, you just have Moutier just actively just killing him, right? I mean, Moutier is just really, really killing them in the turnovers and then the shooting and like, his assist to turnover ratio is barely positive. His shooting is awful. I don't know. There's not a lot more to say about him. I mean, if you look at his defensive numbers for a point guard are pretty terrible.
Yeah, he's
Terrible. It's
just a
just
young player that, if he's on a roster, he should not be getting a lot of minutes. He should be like developing or in the D League or something. But yeah, I don't have too much more on this because a lot of these guys are kind of MVP conversations, so we're going to move into that shortly. And
yeah.
I
That's
know
not
we've
what
been talking about that a lot.
right?
The last thing
Late
I'll say on
enough.
this is Boban is on the list. He did not quite hit that magic number of Dre's 20 rebounds, but he did hit 19. He finally got some minutes. Is this finally when Boban ascends? He's one of our favorite
Okay.
players.
So here's where I always draw this line. Are we going to talk about who we think might be in the real, actual MVP conversation and has a shot?
Okay,
Or are we going to talk about who we think the best players are?
let's get
Because
into
there's
the article. So,
really big
okay,
overlaps.
so
So, I mean,
we
like,
Dre's article here, just to give some context, is about who we think is going to win it, not who deserves to win it.
okay, but then you can't put Bulbin in the list.
No, no, no.
Bulbin
That was
is
just a
not going to
comment.
get
That was a
one
comment on
single.
the top 10 box scores of the week. He made the list, so we'll
I feel
move on
like
from
Bulbin
that.
is the kind of guy, if he got the minutes, he would stand a real shot at most improved.
Sure.
But if he got the minutes though, that's always the big problem with him, right?
No,
Because
I just wanted to give him a shout out, and we can move
that's
on.
generally, if you look back the history of the league, the player that wins most improved is either like a second or third year or fourth year player who was terrible before that because they were a rookie and then finally hit the boom, right? Turned the corner, or they're a player who was always good, and suddenly the coach decided to give them minutes, and everybody noticed that they were good. Right? Those are the two scenarios under which players tend to win most improved.
And it's usually points, right? Like all the other rewards. So it's
The classic example was Kevin Love. When Kevin Love won most improved, it was a joke because everyone except Kurt Rambis totally understood that Kevin Love was a monster, and then suddenly somebody somewhere. Oh, I think what actually happened. I think if I remember this correctly, like Kevin Love was getting kind of sporadic minutes, and then suddenly he had that game against the Knicks where he had 30 points and 30 rebounds, and Kurt Rambis was finally put in that situation where he's like, well, now I have to play this guy minutes or else I'm going to look like an idiot in the press. So I guess I better give him the minutes. And from that point on, he started racking up the Wilt Chamberlain style numbers, right? But before then, the fans paying attention knew that Kevin Love was the Timberwolves' best player. And then he started getting minutes, and then suddenly, people in San Antonio and LA, et cetera, noticed the numbers and decided, oh, he's really improved from last year, even though he's like practically the same player, just getting 30% more minutes.
it's funny you
So
say that Kevin Love has Wilt Chamberlain like numbers, and I'll tell you the reason
well, he
why.
did that year,
Well,
though,
no,
right?
no. Here, let me
That's
say
it.
this though. What is Kevin Love's strengths? Right, it's efficient scoring and it's rebounding a ton and maybe passing a little bit. He doesn't really block shots or steal the ball like we thought Wilt Chamberlain might. But Wilt Chamberlain had all zeros in those numbers. They didn't even keep track of it. So Kevin Love is just like Wilt
Fine,
Chamberlain.
maybe Wilt Chamberlain was a bad comparison. Charles Barkley might have been a better one. Like literally that year that he won Most Improved, he put up numbers that the league had not seen since Charles Barkley, right? Where he was like, it was like something like 25, 12, and 4, or some just really fantastic numbers, right? And that was the year he won Most Improved. Um, and or actually, you know what? I might be mistaken. It might have been the year before that he won Most Improved, but um, I mean, he was. I guess the point I'm making is he was the classic, guy gets more minutes candidate, like who wins most improved. And if you go back through the league and look at the most improved, it's almost always what happens. It's a guy who was really good before, but now he got a ton of minutes. Who won it last year?
Oh, I can't even remember, but yeah, it was someone like that who just yeah. I don't know if it was Will Barton or did he get six man? I can't remember.
Oh, it
Anyway,
was Will Barton or C.J. McCollum or one of those two,
someone
right?
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
Okay.
okay, CJ McCollum. I don't remember if he actually won it, but I remember we looked at the numbers and criticized it because last year all he did was just take more shots, just like you said. He didn't shoot any better
And got
percentage
more minutes.
and got more minutes. So,
The getting more minutes is usually the most important factor. But
all right. So, are we ready? Are we ready to
all
talk
right.
about
Okay.
this article?
Sorry.
Who stands a shot at the MVP? Do
Yeah.
you want me to just like summarize the article briefly and then let you reply? Do you want to do it that way?
I think we could just let the readers read the article. I think I'd rather just have a generic discussion, you and I, like who we
Sure.
think MVP.
So Dre
Like
goes
if you had
through.
to pick, season's going to end today. Who do you think? Let me give you two questions.
Sure.
One, who do you think the voters would pick? And
Okay.
two, who do you think deserves it? Keeping in mind you can't pick like some random dude who doesn't like Boban, who doesn't like you can't pick a completely unrealistic candidate, right? Who do you think deserves it?
Well, I think Harden is definitely going to win it, and that's kind of somewhat the conclusion Dre reaches as well. And yeah, definitely read the article. He points into what correlates with how people vote, so it's really interesting. Yeah, spoiler, it's probably going to be 8 points, but yeah, I think Harden is definitely on track to win it based on also just media hype, right? I think everyone in the media watches the media when they see James Harden favored to be the MVP this year. I don't want to be that one guy who doesn't vote for him. I think people just pile on and vote for him. So I think that's
Yeah.
kind of how it goes. media wise, and of course he's on a big team too.
And does he
Um,
deserve it?
he does deserve it, but does he deserve it the most out of everyone here? It's tough right now because, like we said, Giannis is ridiculous. He might be the first guy to 10 wins. In fact, let's do it live. Let's see, Patrick, if he has reached 10 wins produced yet this season.
He's not. I just checked.
He
It's
just
like,
checked? Okay.
I think it was like 9 something.
Let's bring up the list of players in here and just see how close this is, because here's what I really want to.
8.6.
Yeah, it's really close. Let's see. Oh, this is all messed up, of course. Okay, so we're gonna sort by wins produced, not Alexis, whatever his last name moves. Harden is at 9.9, Gobert is at 9.8, Giannis is at 9.8, Paul is at 9.0. Are you kidding me, Patrick? Look how good everyone is and how close this is.
Sorry, I was reading the wrong number. 8.6 is his pop 48. Yeah.
I will. You know what? I'll go off the rails here and not give it to. I'll give it to Chris Paul still, just because he's played so many less minutes. I think by the end of the season, if he doesn't get hurt again, I think he will have the most impressive resume of all these players. So I'll stick with Chris Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Who deserves it in my heart.
I definitely agree with you about James Harden. It's kind of hard to argue with a guy who's leading. I think he's leading the league in assists per game, right?
Also points.
And so leading in 2 categories is usually like a pretty big boost in terms of voting. And then also to basically be anchoring a team that lost Dwight Howard. And, the average NBA voter, the average MVP voter isn't quite going to understand that Clint Capella is really, really good. And so Dwight Howard didn't cost them nearly as much as it should have. But they're going to think, wow, Dwight Howard went away and then James Harden just put that thing on his shoulders and ran with it. That's going to be the narrative, right? And I think it's kind of a runaway race. It's his race to lose, as they say now. And I think most of us who pay attention saw this coming with Mike D'Antoni taking over this team. Harden fits perfectly the profile of a guy that would flourish in a D'Antoni offense. So. And I think here's the thing. I think he also deserves it.
He definitely deserves it.
But I mean, by sort of conventional metrics, so Chris Paul's gotten injured. I think that team's still going to win quite a few games while Paul is out. Just because DeAndre Jordan is. It was
rough. Jordan is really good, but their record, I think, was under 500 when Paul was out.
Has it been that bad?
It's been bad. He's back now. But yeah, I think illustrated how big of a season.
I mean, there's no doubt Chris Paul's amazing, right? And yeah, I think another kind of overlooked candidate who would never get the votes is Rudy Gobert. The impact he has on that team is kind of crazy. I think so. The Jazz are what they're around a 550 team right now.
Maybe even higher, but Gobert should at least be Defensive Player of the Year. Sorry, Draymond, you're great, but
so they're 24-16. If Gobert doesn't play on that team, they're not even a 500 team. No chance, right? I mean, they got some decent players, but without Gobert, they would be so.
Yeah, Favors has been hurt
a lot of reasons, right? Without Gobert,
they've been devastated by injuries.
But Gobert has been rock solid and just kind of in there dominating the paint on the defensive end night after night after night. It just kind of.
He'll never get it, like you said, because he doesn't score enough points, unfortunately. I'm with you on Harden. The other thing about him is he plays a ton of minutes. He'll probably play more minutes than everyone else in this list.
That's
Maybe
true.
Jimmy Butler will be up there, but so far, no. And that'll his total amounts. I'm sure some voters will like that. The only thing I'll say against Harden is that one of the reasons we like him is because the Rockets are doing so well this year, and all the circumstances you said, right? Replacing Dwight Howard and all that. However, they are kind of feasting on a weak schedule right now, and they've been winning a lot of games with not the best point margin in the world. So if they fall back in the standings a little bit because they've been maybe getting a little lucky, we'll see if he holds it up. But they're not going to collapse. I doubt Clint Capella will come back. And their other injured players might come back. So
what do you think the chances are of Kawhi Leonard winning the award?
I
mean, best player on one of the best teams. It's kind of hard to argue with.
I just don't think he'll do it because he just doesn't score the points that
But he does
Harden does.
now. I mean, he scores. Sorry, he doesn't score the points that Harden does, but he definitely scores enough to be considered a superstar by
Yeah.
the average fan's metric, right? And even the average fan is aware that he's a tenacious and great defender. So it's kind of hard to argue with. Like, and honestly, every time I see Mark Jackson talk about Klay Thompson being the league's best two-way player, I mean,
Oh, it's dumb.
are you really still wondering why you got fired, you dumbass? Like,
I lied earlier, by the way. Russell Westbrook is beating Harden in points. So Westbrook could do it. I think he's maybe the second candidate if Harden falls
Westbrook
off.
won't because his team's not good enough.
Yeah, but if
Um,
he keeps that triple double pace up, he might still
yeah,
do
it's
it.
definitely compelling, but I still think that the fact that both San Antonio and Houston have much better records is going to tip, the scales for most voters.
Westbrook
Just
is the guy.
voters are insane about this. You have to be on a good playoff team to win it, right? I mean, look at how great Kevin Garnett was every year with those Minnesota Timberwolves teams, and he never even sniffed the MVP title until that year where they won the West. Like in 7 years in a row, they were in the playoffs with him, and he led some. Like people talk about that 2000, what was it, 7 team that LeBron led to the playoffs. Take a look at some of those teams that Kevin Garnett led to the playoffs. Like, oh my goodness, where like the second best player was Rasho and Esterovich. Like really
You're not a
terrible
Latrell
teams.
Sprewell guy, Patrick? Yeah, I guess I'm
That
not
was
either.
that was 1 year. That was the year he won MVP.
Yeah.
All the years before that, he was leading atrocious teams to the
Sam
playoffs. And
Cassell, the alien, no respect for him?
again, that was the year he won MVP. Before that, Sam Cassell was not a Timberwolf, right?
Oh, that's okay.
Like I'm saying, look at like the 2000 team. I think that's the one I love to bring up. I'm going to drag that up on the screen for our viewers right now. The 2000 Minnesota Timberwolves. This is a crazy team.
All right, we'll bring it up.
Look at this: Dean Garrett, LaFonso Ellis, Wally Zerbiak, Reggie Slater, Felipe Lopez, Chauncey Billups before he was any good. That's a crazy team, man. He led this team to 47 wins. His second best player was Dean Garrett, I think. Like it's just, it's totally insane.
Oh, Terrell Brandon, don't sell him short.
No, he was injured most of the year, right?
No, he played. Well,
Isn't
are we
it-
talking about 2000, 2001? Or a different season?
Uh,
In 2000, 2001, Terrell Brandon did actually play 2,800 minutes. But yeah,
right. So
he had a
I'm
lot of
thinking
injury
of the year
problems.
after that. So
Okay.
Terrell Brandon played 32 games. That was the year that Chauncey Billups, that was the year they let Chauncey go to Detroit afterwards.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, they had a better record this year. Serbiak was not bad. Serbiak was not bad. We even had
okay.
a Joe Smith sighting here.
I mean, Serbiak was okay, but come on, that team was terrible.
Gary Trent, the Shack of the Mac, no love for him.
Gary Trent, come
Sam
on.
Mitchell was on this team as a player, Patrick. What do you think about that?
And he was like 48 years old or something.
Same with Robert Pack. Wow. Anyway, enough of this
So anyway,
great team.
like until the 2003-04 season, I think it was, right? Or was it the 02 or 03? I forget if it was 02, 03, or 03-04 no, it's 02-03 is actually the one I'm thinking about. Gary Trent, Reggie Slater, Rod Strickland is their point guard, Anthony Peeler, Lauren Woods, Troy Hudson. And he led this team to like 50 games, 50 wins, right? 51 wins. Look at that team. Oh my God. The team is awful. The year before Sam Cassell and Latrell Sprewell came in.
He almost
Anyway,
got to 20 wins.
so
That's pretty impressive.
but the point I'm making is these are all teams that are winning, right? They're 45 plus, and they're in the playoffs 7 years in a row. And yet Kevin Garnett, despite putting up 20-10-5 numbers, which basically hadn't been done since Larry Bird, never even sniffed the MVP voting. Like I think he got one vote 1 year or something. He like never came close until they became a dominant team, until they became that like 60 win team. Then suddenly the MVP voters are like, okay, you deserve our vote now. And you could say Kevin Garnett's numbers in 2003-04 were good, but they weren't really that much better than they were the year before. In fact, if you look at them, they're practically identical, and yet he didn't get any votes the year before.
Yeah. No, you're right.
And
No,
you
I
had
think
like,
so. Yeah, check this article out by Dre. He hits the nail on the head with how MVP voting works. So
yeah,
good
I mean, it's all
article.
about points and being on a winning team. Unless it was the '60s when voters knew their shit, and then you were Bill Russell.
No, I got it. So are we ready for this Corver trade, Patrick?
Oh yeah,
This
okay. Let's talk about the
this is
car.
actual NBA news broke this week, and yeah. So I guess I'll start on this Corver trade. So here's what it actually is. Cavaliers get Kyle Korver from the Hawks. Hawks get Mo Williams, Mike Dunleavy, a 2019 first round pick, and cash considerations. Mike Dunleavy was thinking about maybe not reporting to the Hawks, but he eventually did report, so it looks like they're not going to release him. They're going to keep him. So this trade, we were talking about a little bit before the show. People seem to think, oh, the Cavs are loading up. It's a move to face the Warriors. They're going to win the title again. We weren't as sold on it just because Kyle Korver is kind of showing his age, right? He's not like the star player he has been the past 5 years or so.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
looks like.
you can make the argument that he doesn't need to be when he's playing with LeBron, I guess.
But even as a 3-point specialist, is he that much better than Mike Dunleavy at this point in their careers? Mike Dunleavy's pretty old too. Let's point that
Yeah,
out. But
like is very old, right?
I'm just saying this could be more of a lateral movement in terms of those two main players. Mo Williams is not going to give you that much, and then there's the first round pick, which matters for the future. But even if you're just talking about this season, are swapping those two guys who are both kind of 3-point specialists, is that great for the Cavs? It's something,
To
but
me, it doesn't seem like an upgrade that's worth the first round pick, right? I think it's a very marginal upgrade, but is that worth? And this kind of illustrates the conundrum that you're always in when you are a perennial contender. That the pieces you have, it's hard to give up pieces to improve without sort of overbuying, right? It's definitely hard to. If there's an established player out there, what you have to give up to get them is probably more than what like another sort of mediocre team would have to give up to get there, because the mediocre team probably has a couple of young prospects to trade, whereas you, as a big contending team, you probably just have star veteran players, none of which you want to give up because you're trying to be a contender. And I think the model to follow is sort of like the Spurs, who try to grab underappreciated people in the draft and trade for underappreciated people. They always have a couple of roster spots at the end of the roster open for prospects that they think are interesting, and lots of them pan out. I mean, you don't ever see the Spurs making this kind of a splashy trade to do a marginal improvement. You never see that. The only trades you see them making are like draft day trades where they identify somebody like Kawhi Leonard that they really want and they go after.
yeah,
So
exactly.
to me, it seems like maybe it's a tiny marginal improvement, but it isn't worth the first round draft pick you gave up. And particularly, as a team like this, you're going to need those first round draft picks because someday, LeBron James is going to retire. Someday, Kyrie Irving's going to become a free agent and he might move on. Someday Kevin Love his contract will expire and he might move on. And you're going to want to have some talent at the end of the bench to replace them with.
Yeah, and so Kyle Korver is shooting 40% from three still this year. Pretty damn good, not as high as he has in the past. Mike Dunleavy's at 35, so that's 5 points is a lot. But on the Cavs roster in the playoffs, are either of these guys going to take a ton of shots? Like, are they going to take more than like 5 shots a game? Like, I don't know.
I think so. I mean, I think they're going to plug Carver into like a starting spot, aren't they? Like,
You think they'll give him more like 10 shots a game? They might. Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. Wouldn't you rather have Kyle Korver starting than J.R. Smith, for instance? I mean,
yeah, but again, it's close.
I don't know how they're going to use him, and I'm sure he's played a couple games that I haven't watched and people have already seen. But I guess he's played one game where we played 18 minutes. To me, it seems really weird to be playing Iman Shumpert or J.R. Smith when you have Kyle Korver, even at his age, right?
Yeah, no, but all those players, again, like how much of a role are they going to play? They're just gonna be role players. Like you've got LeBron, you've got Kevin Love,
James, and Kyrie Irving.
You have Kyrie Irving. You have even Tristan Thompson, who's a ridiculously, good scorer. Like those 4 guys just seem like they're going to be taking all the shots.
No, because Thompson's not going to take away. Like Thompson cleans up offensive rebounds and gets his shots that way, right?
Okay.
Thompson, and when he is the target of a pass, it's because he's about to dunk the ball. It's not like Tristan Thompson ever is going to be on the 3-point line, like taking up space and taking a pass that Kyle Korver could have gotten, right? And when you're playing with LeBron James and Kyrie Irving to some extent, what you really need is guys that can stand on the 3-point line and knock down shots. You don't need guys that dominate the ball. And I will say, Dunleavy fit this perfectly too, which is why I don't think this is a big upgrade. But Kyle Korver is the perfect without the ball player, right? He sets great screens. He doesn't need the ball until he's ready to shoot it. He's actually a perfect complement in that sense. But then again, so is Dunleavy. Dunleavy was just your classic role player who, he's out there on the 3-point line and he shoots. And then when he's playing defense, he's a pretty decent rebounder. And I would say Dunleavy was showing his age more than Korver, so
It could be.
It's an incremental upgrade. I don't think there's any doubt that it's an incremental upgrade. Just, was it worth the draft pick? Was it worth that first round pick, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. And hey, even Shumpert, I mean, he defends and rebounds. He doesn't have to shoot at all. Maybe he's better for that slot than either of those guys. But again, it's hard to complain too much about the Cavs. It seems like they're destined for, the finals again.
Yeah, well, I mean, they don't have to march through nearly as tough competition to get there, right? They really pretty much just have to beat the Raptors.
Yeah.
Whereas the West is like this gauntlet, right? It's this gauntlet of craziness that any team that wants to get there. Even like I'm feeling more and more happy about my bet against the Warriors every day because it's this crazy gauntlet in the West, right? You got to get through the Spurs, you got to get through the Rockets now are a threat, you got to get through the Clippers, assuming they're healthy. There's just a lot of teams you have to beat to get to the finals. Whereas in the East, it's like, well, you're either Toronto or you're Cleveland. Like even Boston, that's I don't really consider Boston the big threat right now. And
yeah, it doesn't seem like they have enough to get there. So no, I mean, I don't have too much more on this. I think we've said what there is to say. I mean, who knows? Like with the way the small sample sizes work, maybe Korver will go off for like 5 3-pointers in the NBA Finals, and we'll be like, "Wow, that was a great trade." But I mean,
it's certainly possible, right?
It's certainly possible, but on paper, it's like meh.
It's also certainly possible that you can argue, and probably a really legitimate argument, that okay, let's say he gets a little bit few shots per game than he would get for Atlanta, but they're probably going to be better shots because most of the defenders are going to be trying desperately to prevent LeBron James or Kyrie Irving from scoring under the basket, right? So, I mean, it's definitely one of those situations where Kyle Korver is this crazy threat you have to pay attention to, but holy shit, so is LeBron James, so is Kyrie Irving, so is Kevin Love. And as a defense, you're like, where are my priorities? What am I going to do? And it's definitely not going to be like it was in Atlanta. It was most defenses' number one priority to make sure Kyle Korver isn't shooting an open three. That was probably your biggest priority as a defense when you're playing against Atlanta. That isn't going to be anywhere near your top priority when you're defending the Cleveland Cavaliers, right? When you're defending the Cleveland Cavaliers, your number one priority is going to be make LeBron work as hard as he has to score and distribute the ball. Number 2 is going to be make Kyrie Irving work as hard as he has to score and distribute the ball. Number 3 is try to keep Tristan Thompson off the boards. And then somewhere 4, 5, 6, 7, somewhere along there is, and by the way, don't let Kyle Korver shoot an open three. So it does kind of make sense from that perspective. So at the end of the day, yes, it's an upgrade, but was it worth that first round pick? And I think my answer to that is the shrug emoji. Who knows?
Who knows? Are we going to get into this Derrick Rose saga briefly? I don't have too much to say about it.
So sick. I don't want to talk about Derrick Rose. I really don't. You know what? I'd love to talk about Derrick Rose next time we get like Jessica on the show. Right? Let's have some women on here.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Shout out to her, by the way. Her book came out a couple months ago, and
yes, you should check out the book.
Jessica Luther. We'll link her again. Link to that book. Right. Yeah, she's been doing some like media stuff I've been seeing too. Yeah, she's great. She's the best. So, yeah, we'll skip Derrick Rose in her honor. How about that? But anyway, it's ridiculous, and he's not a good player. That's
frenzy around players who don't deserve it. It's just, it was bad enough when he was a good basketball player with all the sexual assault stuff around him, but now he sucks too. So it's like, why? Yeah. He doesn't deserve any of the drama etc. And who knows? It may turn out he had a perfectly legitimate reason for handling things the way he did. But at the end of the day, all I could say is like, maybe you had a death in the family or something, but you couldn't make a phone call to somebody and say, "Hey, I had a death in the family, going to be offline for a couple days. Bye." That's literally all you need to do, right? And there's essentially, it's really hard for me to think of any particular reason why you should forgive a player for disappearing and not telling anybody about it. It's just,
Well,
you know,
apparently he's trying to. It's part of him trying to force his way off the team, demanding a trade or whatever. So we'll see.
okay, but I
Whatever.
mean,
Who
newsflash, you
cares,
fucking
right?
suck, right?
The Knicks suck.
You're going to be off the team in about 4 months
Yeah.
because it's the last contract, the last year of your contract, and you suck. So
And now he's demanding a max deal. That's part of the news as well. So
I think even in the NBA that's full of idiot GMs, no one is giving him anywhere close
yeah,
to a max deal. I don't think he's going to be lucky to get 10 million a year, the way he currently plays.
for sure. Can we move on to my favorite topic of the day now? Not give Derrick Rose too much.
Is your favorite topic how your team is somehow going to trade for Hassan Whiteside?
No, that's coming next. That's a bullshit topic. This is my favorite topic though,
Okay.
which is DeMarcus Cousins versus Zaza Pachulia feud this week. And it's not really a feud; it's kind of just a joke. But the basic story here is that Cousins is, kind of been going ham out in the media lately and on the court like he's wanting to do, and Zaza Pachulia is ahead of him in the All-Star voting for centers as of when we have this show, which is January 11th, 2017. And let me just read the headline of this ABC article here because I thought this kind of summarized it well, which is sarcastic Cousins on trailing Pachulia in the All-Star fan voting. He's a better player than me right now. Well, this is the reason why this is my favorite topic. Why are you being sarcastic, Cousins? He is a better player than you right now. Let's go to the numbers. Okay, so
Yeah, let's go to the numbers.
we start with, wins produced. They're actually even, but at 2.9 so far. However, Pachulia has produced that many wins in half the number of minutes. He's 600 something, Cousins is 1200 something. So he's got like double the, points over par per 48 basically than Pachulia does, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just not the end of it, right? Why is he better? Well, he rebounds better. He's better assisted turnover, better passer. Cousins supposed to be a good passer. He doesn't, block shots the way he does, but he's much more efficient at shooting, right? We know Cousins, low efficiency player. 56% true shooting is not bad for him. That's like average, so we'll
It's
take
average
it.
for a center, right?
Right, but he's not a very good scorer. Pachulia, on the other hand, is over 60% true shooting. So I can't see any arguments other than Cousins has played more minutes, which we don't usually buy. Why are you being sarcastic, Cousins? That's all I have to say.
I mean, it's obvious Pachulia is one of those players who plays a certain role, and since that role doesn't involve scoring a ton of points, he's extremely undervalued. Um, I mean, I think it's obvious that a lot of GMs around the league would rather have DeMarcus Cousins than Pachulia, but those GMs are wrong. I mean, one of the reasons that Cousins isn't nearly as good as he thinks he is because he plays a style in which he must dominate the ball and must like shoot and have the ball a lot, even though those aren't his strengths at all. He'd actually be a way better player if he focused on, rebounding and blocking
If he
shots.
played like
And
DeAndre Jordan, right? That's what he
he,
needs to
he
do.
could even be a little bit more like he's obviously got low post moves that Jordan does not
That's
have.
true.
Right? So I'm not advocating that he should shoot like never shoot.
But the
I'm just
outside
saying
shooting.
I'm just saying if you watch any Sacramento Kings game, I don't care how much of a stan you are for DeMarcus Cousins. Watch any Kings game, and I bet you can find 6 shots over the course of a game where you say, the Kings would have been better off if Cousins hadn't shot that shot. And if you just took those 6 shots and you fucking took them away from DeMarcus Cousins, he would suddenly be an all-star player. Just boom. Overnight like that.
Let me just tell you, I
So-
think Cousins is 100% an all-star this year, and I'll tell you why.
Oh, wait, so that's actually...
He has vowed to release an R&B album if he is voted to be an all-star, with that in mind, I think he's 100% All-Star. I want this R&B album to drop, so everyone go out there, vote Cousins for All-Star.
Fair enough. I mean, he's one of the classic case. He's like Carmelo like 10 years ago, right? Where like now everyone kind of agrees with us that Carmelo isn't really very good and isn't as good as he, thinks he is. But we were saying that 10 years ago, and it was true then too. And again, it was not because he wasn't talented. It wasn't because he didn't have the physical tools. It was because that at the end of the day, choices you make matter, and they have as much they have as much impact on the outcome of the game as your physical talent does. Like, it doesn't matter if you have the talent to dominate the game. If you shoot 5 or 6 terrible shots every year that basically subtract all the good things you did, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And he's been in the league, 8 years now? Like, stop it. He's not going to learn. He's not going to stop doing those things. I wish people would, like, he's nearing the end of his second contract, and people still talk about him as if he's this young player who's going to improve. He's not going to improve. He's never going to learn to not do those 5, 6, 7 dumbass things that he does every game. They will always be there. And they're in the form of bad shots, or they're in the form of some stupid ass foul 90 feet from the basket, or something else that he does. I mean, there's a reason he fouls out so often. It's because he makes dumbass decisions, and those decisions have impacts on the outcome of a game. And it doesn't matter if he's like super talented. It doesn't matter if he could be Wilt Chamberlain. He isn't Wilt Chamberlain, and it's never going to change.
I admire his, passion and how he plays so hard when he's been stuck on this bad team for his whole career. However, apparently it's rumored now that there's mutual interest and both sides are going to re-sign like a max deal, so he's going to be there long term.
Right. I mean,
so
he can make like way more per year than if he moved.
Typical Kings move, sadly, but despite that, like, yeah, you're right. Like, he, magnitude matters. The bad negative stats matter too. And I'm just glad for the Kings that they have secured him long term. I mean, he could be their best musical talent since the late, great Wayman Tisdale, who is a great jazz musician after his career with the Kings. Rest in peace, him. However, Cousins'
was
basketball
Wayman Tisdale
talent,
a great jazz musician?
Allegedly. So, check out Wayman Tisdale's work as a jazz musician.
I'm not familiar with it.
R&B Cousins, though, I'm happy for that. But player Cousins, it's just that's not going to be a good contract for the Kings, I don't think. Even at his age, like, okay, here's the thing, Dre. I think, he's still fairly young. He's in his mid-20s, but he has been in the league a long time. I just don't think he doesn't get it. He just seems kind of like he's immature a little bit and just doesn't realize the right way to play is the way that, the Spurs play.
I mean, at this point, he's 27, 28? Like, why do we think he's going to get
Is he that
more
old?
mature?
Maybe he is, yeah.
I think he's 27, but I could be wrong.
I agree. At that age, he is who he is.
I think that was true 2 years ago too. Like, I mean, he's probably got 10,000 NBA minutes at least, 12,000, something like that.
I would bet so. He's
like at some point, it's like, okay, he's not going to improve. He is who he is, right? It's just, I don't know. Maybe if like he went to San Antonio, he would change.
Maybe, although LaMarcus Aldridge, we keep waiting for that to happen. He's still just kind of LaMarcus Aldridge, so we'll see.
Right, but I just mean from an attitude perspective.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
But so far, no coach has had any impact on him. So,
do we? Let's see. Do we want to get into Whiteside? We talked about that briefly before shoutouts. We got a little bit of time.
We got a little bit of time. So apparently, Whiteside is on the trading block, or is this just everybody's on the trading block, and then somebody ran with it and assumed Whiteside's on the trading block?
So Zach Lowe, who we consider to be a connected guy, who's usually right about this kind of stuff. He said on his podcast recently, up and down the roster, literally every player, Noah's untouchable, not even Hassan Whiteside by a long shot. And there's also a Real GM article where Whiteside responds saying he's not worried about trade rumors. So it's being reported that it's a real thing, that the Heat are going to tear everything down. So who should trade for Whiteside? What should they offer, Patrick? I guess that's my question to you.
I do like your idea of Klay Thompson and pieces for Whiteside.
Oh, if you're going to be greedy, then Klay Thompson, make that super team happen. Yeah.
Although, yeah, I mean, it's a bit of
Cheaper
a,
yearly contract, lower years than Whiteside.
it does kind of create a bit of a spacing problem. Like, I don't think it fits offensively great in Golden State. I don't know how quickly Hassan Whiteside would get. I mean, so in that offense, it's fantastic to have a center of the type of Zaza or Andrew Bogut, how he was, right? A center who
Oh, the
doesn't
passer.
doesn't really, well, A, he's a passer. B, he basically never wants a post up, so they don't do any inefficient post up action. Um, it's kind of hard to see Whiteside fitting into a system like that. Now, it's also possible that Steve Kerr would throw the playbook out the window and say, okay, now that I have Hassan Whiteside, let's work some post ups into this and have a totally different style of offense. But I'd rather, if I were going to trade Klay Thompson, I think trading Klay Thompson's an awesome idea. But if I were going to trade him, it would be for an even better 3-and-D guy, right?
Yeah.
Because I think just that it works so well in that system.
Yeah, who are
So,
some other teams, like, good contending type of teams that would want to try to get him? Like, who,
well, then the open question is it just contenders that want him, or is it
oh,
like,
that's true.
you know? So what about, for example, what if Milwaukee traded Greg
Ooh.
Monroe and Chris Middleton and stuff?
How can they
So
do Gobert and Whiteside? Twin Towers? Is that what they do?
what
Oh,
Milwaukee is?
oh, I'm sorry, Milwaukee. Okay. Not Jazz,
So
just
so the
kidding.
problem here is what not many contenders are going to be able to purchase Whiteside because what if the Heat are tearing it all up? What they probably want is like 3 first-round draft picks and no players, right? That would
Yeah.
be the ideal, or like an expiring deal and 2 first-round draft picks or something like that,
Or
right?
what about a rookie, like someone who's basically, like a draft pick?
Or a great rookie, right? They would want something like that.
76ers,
I
maybe?
just thought of it.
76ers?
I
Okay.
just thought of it.
Okay.
Listen to me here. Beautiful. Andrew Wiggins, Minnesota's next first round pick. Hell, Minnesota's next 2 first round picks. Andrew Wiggins and who they got as a contract? Who they got as a contract?
Ricky
It's got
Rubio?
got it. And Ricky Rubio for Hassan Whiteside. Make it happen.
There we
Man,
go.
that's a great deal, wouldn't it?
We both got our
I
bias
just
trades in
think I
there.
bet the Heat would think it's a great deal because Andrew Wiggins' stock is really high for even though it shouldn't be, right? I bet that. Oh man, Timberwolves should get in on this action. Can you imagine Karl Anthony Towns and Hassan Whiteside playing together on the same team? That'd be kind of insane. They would definitely need to get or train up a shoot first style point guard though to play with them.
And, so a guy that is pretty likely to move too is Dragic, because he makes money. There's some teams that could use him. I think he's not totally done, is he? Or maybe he
I
is.
don't
I don't know.
know. I mean, I don't. I think he's good, but no one thinks he's a fantastic, great player. I guess would probably be my guess.
Yeah, he may not even be seen as an asset considering he has a reasonable contract. So, yeah, who knows?
Yeah. How about this? The Pelicans trade. Let me think. The Pelicans trade Buddy Held
Ooh, that's a good one.
and Langston Galloway, a first round pick, and like Omar Ashik or some other piece in there.
That's a good one. I like that.
That would be huge for them too, right?
How good would that front line be? Whiteside and Anthony Davis as your 2 big men. That might be the best in the league. Can't think of anything better.
Oh, you
It's
mean
insane.
like Karl Anthony Towns and Hassan Whiteside?
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. If we could fictionally put Whiteside on any front court, then it gets a lot tougher. But
Yeah, I
anyway,
think you'd want to put him on a team with where the power forward is a stretcher, right?
I hope he stays on the Heat. I hope they don't trade him for some reason. I don't know. I like him there, so maybe the Heat fans will get to keep him, but we'll see.
It feels like one of those trades that would only happen in the off season, right? Well, like
Mm,
because it's like a contending team isn't going to want to give up any of its good pieces,
yeah.
and the non-contending teams don't need Hassan Whiteside right now, right? So there's like a small subset of teams that are like kind of 500 teams that have some young pieces that they would totally give up for Hassan Whiteside to become better teams, but it feels like a small subset, right?
It's just any player that's that good, it's really hard to trade. Like it's hard to
Yeah.
put it together. The salary, the assets,
Yeah.
the assets the Heat would want. So yeah, it's hard to move him. Like Charles Barkley trades. If anyone young is watching this show, he got traded from the 76ers to the Heat for a whole boatload of players, including Jeff Hornacek. Trades like that are just really hard to put together and don't happen that often.
Yeah.
Did I say Heat? I meant Suns. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's hot in Phoenix, so
there we go. They both have warmth-related mascots.
All right, I'm starving. My head's hurting.
Let's do the shout-outs.
Got some shout-outs. You got a shout-out for us today?
Yeah, I do. Thanks to, of course, all the viewers and commenters. We had some good comments on Dre's article this week, but my big shout-out actually is to, let me make sure I get the name right here because it's a mouthful here. It is Awesome Games Done Quick 2017. We've shouted them out on this show before, but it's a Twitch speedrunning marathon that you can view there, and they raise money for good causes this year. It is the Prevent Cancer Foundation. They're coming up on 600,000 raised after the first few days. It's going for the rest of the week, so they'll probably get up over 1 million. And yeah, check it out on the Games Done Quick channel if you want to watch some good speedrunning or just give money to fight cancer. Great job. Oh, and I have a special shout out actually. I watched the Final Fantasy 1 speedrun last night on the side when the Warriors game was going on. Not only did they have a great run, they even killed Warmech, so, some good speedruns going on, Patrick. That's my shout out.
I don't have a shout out this week. I'm not prepared at all for this. I have no shout outs.
Shout out to future Minnesota Timberwolf Hassan Whiteside.
No one anywhere in the world is deserving of my praise tonight. I'm sorry.
Did you see Rogue One?
Ill prepared.
I
did see Rogue One. I loved Rogue One. I loved that it's really a war movie, right? It's like it's not fucking around. It's not like a fantasy. I mean, it is a fantasy adventure too, obviously, but it's like a war movie. Like it was as dark as any movie about Vietnam might have been. Right? It definitely was very cool. And I loved the retcon. I loved how they made the whole chain reaction in the Death Star make sense, right? So now, after that, there's only two big, giant, gaping things in the Star Wars universe that still bug the shit out of me, one of which is, in my opinion, probably not fixable, right? So the first is the fact that the second Death Star also blew up with a big chain reaction, but you could maybe chalk that up. You can maybe retcon that away by saying, well, they did like every decent software developer did. They just took all the plans from the original Death Star and incorporated them without looking too closely, and so they built the same flaw into the second Death Star.
They just branched off another, development branch.
It's like forking off the Windows 95 kernel and then not fixing any of the bugs, right? So that's you can kind of retcon. But the other one, and this is the one that has always pissed me off, and it's basically, you gotta wish Disney had purchased the franchise before the prequels. It was the fact that like Star Wars and A New Hope, it builds all this mythology about an ancient religion and everybody's forgotten who Jedis are and that the Force even works and all that shit. And then you go to episode 1 and you're like, oh, that was 20 years ago. Oh, that totally fucking makes sense that everybody in the universe forgot how everything around the Jedis and the Force worked in 20 years, right? It's just like if you're watching A New Hope for the first time, you're thinking the Jedi is like some 10,000-year-old religion or something, right? No, it's just 20 years ago there was a council and then they broke up and then everybody decided they were a myth. It's like, what the fuck? It makes no sense at all. And I wish there were a way to retcon that, but there probably isn't any way to retcon that.
So one thing I complained to Dre about, I don't know if it was on the show last week or not, I think it was, is about the retcon, is that Grand Moff Tarkin had this line in episode 4 where he's like, evacuate now, you underestimate their chances. But if he was there the whole time when the plans got stolen like he was, shouldn't he have had a bigger threat in episode 4? Shouldn't he have...
The key to the whole plot device is that they don't know why the plans were important because they don't know about the flaw that's baked in.
Oh, well, okay.
He kept that secret from the Empire. So they're thinking, wow, they did a lot of effort to steal these plans, but they
But we're
don't know.
still impregnable. Okay, okay.
Well, I guess they understand that the plans are a strategic advantage, but they don't quite understand how big of a threat it is, right? Like how
Okay.
key it is.
I agree with you then.
The thing with Grandma Tarkin that got me is that I thought he was on screen a little bit too long, and it definitely got to the uncanny valley for me.
He was too CG.
And it wasn't so much his. It was a little bit of his face. It was a little bit of that. And you kind of look at the way his eyes move and stuff. You kind of, if you're paying close attention, you notice that his eyes move, but he's not necessarily looking where a normal actor would be looking during his conversations. And then the other is sort of the way he walked. In the CGI, it reminded me a little bit too much of like how the exoskeleton in the Terminator walks and stuff. That kind of it's kind of a smooth gait, but it also looks a little bit robotic, kind of the way he walks.
The way they
So
did it with Gold Leader and Red Leader was way better, right? Because that was like brief little moments where it looked better, and that was my favorite part was when those two met in there.
I actually think it was fine that they did it that way because your suspension of disbelief was fine, was okay, but it was just a little bit too long. Uh,
That's okay.
and I thought Leah was significantly more uncanny valley
Yeah.
than he
Although
was.
looking back on it, it's great they got her in there, right? Because Carrie Fisher just died and Debbie
Yeah,
Reynolds, so rest in
that,
peace, both of them.
that's
Shout outs to both of them. We're still in shout
shout
outs.
outs to the Reynolds family, man.
Yeah,
That's pretty harsh. I
that's
shall
it.
sing "Singing in the Rain" in her honor at karaoke this week.
There we go. There we go. And maybe I said this on the show already too. Can you believe it? She was 19 when she did that role, same age Carrie Fisher did her role. And on top of that, Debbie Reynolds had no dance training before she did that role, allegedly. Are you kidding me? How talented is
Yeah,
she, Patrick? How
yeah.
hardworking.
She even interviewed about how, because she didn't have dance training, she had to train so much on set, like train to the point that her feet were bleeding all the time because she didn't have the calluses that a normal dancer would have had.
SAG wasn't as
So,
strong back then, I guess.
well, and
Anyway.
also apparently she kind of moaned a little bit about it, and apparently, um, uh, sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
Oh, the director?
No, not Fred Astaire, but
Oh, the other guy, the other actor. Yeah, I can't remember.
the, ah. Anyway, he was like he was having none of it. He was like, toughen up, lady. You shouldn't have taken this role in the first place if you can't dance.
There we go.
Yeah, I had no sympathy for him. Sorry, am I drawing a blank? Is it? Wait, it's not. Is it Fred Astaire? No, it's Gene.
Gene Kelly?
Kelly. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Very.
Should have been Gene Autry. That would have been a better choice for that role. Anyway, I'm done with my shout outs, Patrick. I'll let you go eat.
Could Gene Autry even dance?
He could make them dance with his shooting. Just like
All right,
Yosemite
man.
Sam.
Take care. We'll see you next week, maybe, huh?
Good night.
Oh, wait. We're supposed to say goodbye to the regular people. I'm like just talking to you like we're talking on the phone or something.
Goodbye.
Our show every week at boxscoregeeks.com. You can also find us on Twitter. Brian is at Boxscore Brian. Dre is at Nerd Numbers. I'm not on Twitter anymore. We'll talk about that some other time. You can find us on iTunes if you search for Boxscore Geeks. You can find us at twitch.tv/Nerd Numbers. You can find us on Stitcher. Where else can we find us? Have I got them all?
Libsyn?
Libsyn. You can find us at Libsyn. I don't even know what that is, and I work like in the tech industry. Man, kids these days. It was a pleasure doing the show. Hope we see you again next week, and goodbye and good night.